My story is, as I listen to different folks talk tonight, starting with Pam on the very first and through Carter and others, there were words that were not being used, but I felt were sitting in their stories. And to have a new beginning, it strikes me that there's always an ending that maybe preceded it. And whether Carter was talking about his identity or Pam's talking about moving from one place to the next, and there's this really a formal ending that happens when a new beginning sits someplace. And my story is about, in October of 1996, I signed the papers to sell my company that I had owned and led since I was 24 years old. And I didn't do it because I was forced into it, and I didn't do it because it was economically driven. I really did it because I was ready after that length of time for some new opportunity. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that that had to occur in order to make that possible. And what happened when I sold the company is I experienced a great many sensations that I had no anticipation for. One was I realized I was out of the club. I was off the team. I became a storyteller, not a story maker. I was living on reputation rather than results. And all of these aspects were literally very overwhelming because I hadn't anticipated any of that. I looked at the transaction, worked on the transaction as a business guy. Let's bring it to conclusion. Let's make it as successful as we can. And when all that happened and all of that stopped, there was this void, literally. And it expressed itself in people coming up to me and saying, "So, what do you do?" And I would go, and that literally was the response. Because in our culture, we're generally known by what we do. We eventually ask people where they vacation and those kinds of things, but it is within the first 30 seconds of most people making a connection, what do you do? And when you don't have an answer to that, it is a very big opportunity for some self-insight. Mine took a rather extended period of time for that insight. And eventually, we're sitting around our family table, and my two daughters, one who's sitting here, says, "Dad, we really think you should maybe go back to school and be in teaching and so forth. We think you really do well in that environment." And I knew the wise counsel that she had received for her entire life, so I thought, good roots here. And I did that. And what I came to find out, and as I got involved in the education piece and then worked on a dissertation, I decided to go interview other people who had experienced what I had. People who had owned a company, were no longer affiliated with it. They didn't have to be the founder, but they had to have a personal identity with that business that went away. And it was an extremely illuminating process for me. I mean, it was an academic process, but it was also very much of a personal mission kind of thing for me to come to some basis of understanding and eventually some place of comfort with the fact that these endings occur in our lives. These exits, these role exits occur in our lives. And again, as I was listening to each person talk up here, it wasn't applicable to each case, but there were a lot of cases where those words could, in fact, sit in their story, that there was a role exit and a new role made itself available, or they went and found it. And I find that concept in so many ways now on people that I talk to, and I use that language with them because to me it has meaning and it has substance, and it gives me a sense of when a new beginning is presenting itself that there's quite a bit of unknown and there's generally a bunch of fear, and it always has some great adventure sitting behind it. So that's my story.